His ships came without warning on a Tuesday morning in the year 2347. 300 warships appeared above Earth like dark clouds covering the sun. Each ship was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. The smallest one was 3 kilometers long. The largest was 20. They hung in the sky above every major city. Blocking out the light and casting shadows that stretched for miles, people stopped in the streets and looked up. Children pointed at the sky. Old men and women remembered the stories their grandparents told them about the day humans first discovered. They were not alone in the universe, but those had been small ships, distant signals, brief contacts. This was different. This was an invasion. In the United Earth Council building in Geneva, alarms were screaming. Officers ran through hallways with tablets in their hands. Screens showed the alien fleet from every angle. Admiral Una Park stood at the center of the chaos, her dark eyes fixed on the main display. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and a face that showed no fear. She had commanded ships in 3 colonial wars. She had never lost a battle, but she had never seen anything like this. "They're hailing us," said a young officer. "All frequencies. They want to talk." Admiral Park nodded slowly. "Then we talk." Ambassador Somi Cho was chosen to meet them. She was 40 years old, slim and elegant, with a reputation for staying calm when everyone else panicked. She had negotiated peace treaties between warring colonies. She had talked terrorists into surrendering. Now she was about to speak with beings who had crossed the stars. A shuttle took her up to the largest alien ship. As she approached, she saw symbols carved into the hull in languages she did not recognize. The ship was old, very old. It had been flying between stars when humans were still living in caves. Inside, the air was cold and smelled like metal. Alien guards led her through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The guards were tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their weapons spoke for them. The meeting room was vast and empty except for a single platform in the center. On that platform stood a creature unlike anything Somi had ever seen. It was thin and pale, with a long neck and eyes that glowed soft blue. It wore robes covered in golden symbols. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through dead leaves. "Am Arbiter Kale," it said. "I speak for the Galactic Hegemony. We have ruled this galaxy for 40,000 of your years. 17 species bow to us. Hundreds of worlds pay us tribute. We have watched your kind grow from animals throwing rocks to creatures flying between stars. It has been amusing." Somi kept her face calm. "We are honored by your visit," she said carefully. Kale made a sound that might have been laughter. "You should be. We do not visit often. We come now because you have grown enough to be useful. You will join the hegemony. This is not a request." He waved one thin hand, and images appeared in the air. Documents, contracts, lists of demands. "The standard integration protocol," Kale explained. "You will give us 30% of all resources your worlds produce. You will send us 10 million of your people each year to serve as workers in our colonies. You will destroy 80% of your military ships. In return, we will allow you to exist." Somi read the documents carefully. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. "And if we refuse?" Kale tilted his head like a bird looking at an insect. "No species has refused in 12,000 years. Those who refused before that time no longer exist. Their worlds are empty rock. Their names are forgotten. You may choose what you wish, Ambassador, but choose wisely. How long do we have to decide?" 7 of your days. After that, we will take our answer from your silence." Somi returned to Earth with the documents. Within an hour, every world leader had read them. Within 2 hours, the streets were filled with people shouting in anger and fear. Some demanded surrender. Others demanded war. Most simply stood in shock, unable to believe what was happening. Admiral Una Park called a secret meeting in a bunker. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, only 12 people attended. They were the most powerful humans alive, and they all looked afraid. All except Admiral Park. "They think we are weak," she said quietly. "They think we are young and foolish and easy to crush. They have conquered hundreds of worlds with this same trick. Show up with a big fleet. Make demands. Watch the little species bow down. Can we fight them? Asked the president of Earth. Their ships are larger than our cities. Admiral Park smiled. It was not a kind smile. For 30 years, we have been preparing for this day. We knew someone would come eventually. We knew they would be stronger. So we've built weapons they cannot imagine. We hid them where no one would look. We trained soldiers in secret. We made plans. She pressed a button and images appeared on the screen. Weapons platforms hidden in asteroid fields. Ships that could bend light around themselves and become invisible. Railguns that could fire metal rods at 15% the speed of light. Technologies that the hegemony thought were impossible. They are old, Park said. They have been the strongest for so long that they have forgotten how to be afraid. They have not fought a real war in 10,000 years. We have been fighting each other since we climbed down from trees. War is in our blood. It is in our bones. They want tribute. Let us give them something they will never forget. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the leaders began to nod. On the 7th day, Ambassador Somi Cho stood in her office with her hand on the transmit button. Outside her window, the alien ships still hung in the sky like patient vultures. Billions of people held their breath. The whole world was watching. The whole galaxy was listening. She thought about her daughter, just 6 years old. She thought about all the children who would grow up as slaves if she said yes. She thought about what her grandmother had told her long ago. Some things are worth more than survival. She pressed the button. Her voice went out across all frequencies, to every ship in orbit, to every world in the hegemony. This is Ambassador Somi Cho of United Earth. We have received your demands. We have considered them carefully. Here is our answer. She took a deep breath. No. Far above Earth, Arbiter Kale stared at his communication screen in disbelief. In 40,000 years of history, in countless worlds conquered and countless species broken, no one had ever given that answer. The single word hung in the air like a declaration of war, because that is exactly what it was. High Overlord. Vorn had ruled the galactic hegemony for 1,000 years. He had crushed rebellions on 40 worlds. He had ordered the death of billions. He had never once felt fear. When his servants brought him the recording of humanity's response, he listened to it 3 times. Then he laughed. One word, he said to Commander Thren, his most trusted general. They gave us one word. These creatures truly do not understand what they are facing. Commander Thren was a warrior born. His body was covered in scars from 100 battles. He had never lost a fight in his 600 years of life. What are your orders, my overlord? Vorn waved his hand lazily. Send a correction fleet. 2,000 ships should be enough. Burn their colonies. Destroy their military. Leave their homeworld standing, but kill half the population. The survivors will beg to sign our treaty. It will be done. The correction fleet launched within a week. 2,000 warships, each one a killing machine perfected over millennia. They had destroyed civilizations before. They would destroy this one too. On Earth, Admiral Una Park watched the fleet approach on her sensors. She stood in the command center, buried 2 kilometers beneath the ocean, surrounded by screens and officers and the quiet hum of machines. Captain Jin Hokwon stood beside her, his young face serious and determined.
Now, 2,000 ships, he said.
More than 10 times our visible force. Visible force, Park repeated, with a thin smile. That is the key word, Captain. Visible. She had prepared for this moment for 30 years. Every asteroid belt in the solar system hid weapon platforms. Every moon concealed missile bases. Ships wrapped in light-bending technology floated invisible in the darkness between planets. The hegemony saw 200 human warships defending Earth. They did not see the other 800 hiding in the shadows. They will come through the outer system first, Park said. They always do. It is their doctrine. Sweep the perimeter, then close in for the kill. Predictable, arrogant, perfect. Captain Quan nodded. He commanded the flagship Defiance, the most advanced ship humanity had ever built. It was smaller than hegemony vessels, but faster and meaner. When do we strike? When they pass Neptune? Let them think they have one. Let them feel confident. Then show them what humans can do. Commander Thren led his fleet into the solar system with contempt in his heart. His sensors showed him 200 primitive ships clustered around the third planet. His weapons could destroy them in minutes. This would not even be a battle. It would be an execution. Humans, he muttered to his officers. A species that has been flying between stars for barely 2 centuries thinks it can defy us. They do not know that we were conquering worlds when their ancestors were learning to make fire. His fleet passed Neptune, then Uranus, then Saturn. The human ships did not move. They just waited near their homeworld like animals too stupid to run. Pathetic, Thren said. All ships prepare for the universe exploded. Dr. Hannah Lim pressed the activation button from her post on the dark side of Saturn's moon Titan. She was 35 years old, a genius who had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. Operation Blindside is go, she said calmly. Across the solar system, hidden platforms came alive. Weapons that the hegemony considered theoretically impossible opened fire. Railguns launched tungsten rods at 15% the speed of light. At that speed, a metal rod the size of a car hit with the force of a nuclear bomb. Directed energy weapons cut through shields designed for plasma fire like hot knives through paper. The hegemony had spent 40,000 years perfecting defenses against weapons they knew. They had no defense against weapons they thought could not exist. 800 ships decloaked behind the hegemony fleet. Cutting off their retreat, Captain Ginho Kwan led the charge from the front. His ship dancing through enemy fire with impossible grace. Commander Thren stared at his screens in horror. Ships were dying all around him. Explosions lit up the darkness of space like 1,000 suns. His shields meant nothing. His armor meant nothing. His weapons could not even target enemies that moved too fast to track. How? He screamed. This is impossible. They are primitives. In 11 minutes, 800 hegemony ships were destroyed. Their wreckage formed a ring of fire around Saturn. Thren ordered retreat, but human ships were faster. They picked off fleeing vessels one by one, choosing their targets with cold precision. Admiral Perk watched the battle from her command center with no expression on her face. She had dreamed of this moment for 3 decades. She had sacrificed everything for it. Marriage, children, a normal life. All so that humanity would be ready when the tyrants came. Let some escape, she ordered. We need witnesses. Captain Kwan acknowledged the command. His ship pulled back, opening a gap in the human lines. 340 hegemony vessels fled through it, their engines burning at maximum as they raced for the edge of the solar system. When the battle was over, the solar system was quiet again. Debris floated where a mighty fleet had been. The stars shone cold and bright. Humanity had won its first battle against the masters of the galaxy. Admiral Park opened a channel to all frequencies. Her voice went out to every world that could hear it, traveling at the speed of light across the darkness between stars. This is Admiral Una Park of United Earth. Today, the Galactic Hegemony sent 2,000 ships to punish us for refusing their demands. Today, we destroyed most of that fleet. We did not start this war. We did not want this war. But we will not run from it, and we will not lose it. To the hegemony, I say this: we are not your slaves. We are not your tribute. We are humanity, and we bow to no one. To the rest of the galaxy, to every species living under the hegemony's boot, I say this: if we can fight, so can you. The tyrants are not gods. They can bleed. Today we proved it. She ended the transmission and turned to Captain Kwan. His face was covered in sweat, his hands still shaking from the battle, but his eyes were bright with fierce joy. They will come back, he said. With more ships. Many more, yes, Park agreed. But now they know what they are facing. Now they are afraid. And afraid enemies make mistakes. Oh, far away. On the hegemony homeworld, High Overlord Vorn watched recordings of the battle in complete silence. He watched his ships die. He watched weapons he thought impossible tear through shields he thought invincible. He watched everything he believed about the universe proven wrong in 11 minutes of fire and death, for the first time in 1,000 years. The High Overlord felt cold fear creeping into his ancient heart. These humans were not like other species. They were something new. Something dangerous. Something that might actually be able to destroy him. He called for his generals. If the humans wanted war, he would give them war. He would gather every ship in the hegemony. He would crush them with numbers so vast that no weapon could stop them. He would burn their worlds and salt their ground and make sure no one ever remembered they had existed. But as he gave his orders, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a question he could not silence. What if that is not enough? The news traveled faster than light itself. Every world with a receiver heard the story. A young species called humanity had refused the hegemony's demands. They had said one word, no. And when the hegemony sent ships to punish them, the humans destroyed most of the fleet in 11 minutes. On 100 conquered worlds, slaves who had known nothing but suffering their entire lives looked up at the sky and whispered to each other. The masters could be beaten. The tyrants could bleed. For the first time in generations, they allowed themselves to feel something they had forgotten existed. Hope on the ice world of Keth. Workers in the mining pits passed the story from mouth to mouth. On the jungle planet of Vesa, servants in the great houses repeated Admiral Park's words to their children. On the factory world of Droma, laborers who had never seen sunlight sang quiet songs about the humans who said no. The hegemony had ruled through fear for 40,000 years. Now something stronger than fear was spreading through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. High Overlord. Warren felt the change even before his spies reported it. The tribute shipments slowed. The labor quotas went unfilled. There were whispers of resistance in places that had been silent for centuries. He knew what it meant. The humans had not just won a battle. They had lit a spark that could burn down everything he had built. He called every fleet in the hegemony home. 50,000 warships answered his command. It was the largest armada ever assembled in galactic history. Ships that had patrolled distant sectors for centuries returned to the homeworld. Vessels that had been used to crush rebellions on the outer rim gathered in one place. The Grand Armada filled the sky above the hegemony capital like a steel blanket blocking out the stars. This fleet will destroy the humans, Vorn declared to his commanders. We will burn their worlds to ash. We will kill every man, woman, and child. We will erase them from history so completely that future generations will think they were nothing but a myth. And then we will remind the galaxy why they bow to us. Commander Thren, the only survivor of the first battle, knelt before his master. He had been shamed by his defeat. He begged for a chance to redeem himself. Vorn granted it. Thren would lead the Grand Armada. He would have his revenge. On Earth, Admiral Una Park studied the reports from her intelligence network. 50,000 ships. It was a number so large, it seemed unreal. Humanity's entire fleet, including all hidden vessels, numbered less than 1,000. Even with their advanced weapons, they could not win a direct fight against such odds. We cannot defeat them in open battle, she told her war council. If we try, we will lose. Our worlds will burn. Our people will die. That is the simple truth. Captain Jinho Quan stood by the window, looking out at the stars. Then what do we do? Surrender? Never. Park's voice was iron. We do not fight their way. We fight our way. Guerrilla tactics. Hit and run. Strike their supply lines. Destroy their fuel depots. Kill their scouts. Make them bleed for every step they take toward our worlds. Dr. Hannah Lim pulled up maps on the main screen. She had been working without sleep for days, planning, calculating, finding weaknesses. Their strength is also their weakness. 50,000 ships need massive supplies. Fuel, food, ammunition. They cannot carry enough for a long campaign. They need supply lines stretching back to their territory. If we cut those lines, the fleet starves. And there is something else, said Ambassador Somi Cho. She had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now she stepped forward with a light in her eyes. The hegemony is not just fighting us. They are fighting their own subjects. I have been in contact with resistance movements on 5 different worlds. They want to help us. They want to fight. Park raised an eyebrow. You have been busy, Ambassador. The hegemony took everything from these people. Their freedom, their families, their futures. They have been waiting for a chance to strike back. We gave them that chance when we said no. Now, they are ready to rise. The alliance was built in secret, through coded messages and hidden meetings. The humans could not send ships to help the resistance, but they could send something more valuable: information. Dr. Lim provided technical data on hegemony weaknesses. Ambassador Cho coordinated timing so that uprisings would distract the enemy at critical moments. Captain Kwan trained alien rebels through long-distance communication, teaching them human tactics that the hegemony had never faced. But the most dangerous mission fell to Sergeant Taiho Ru. He was 30 years old, the best Special Forces soldier in Earth's military. He had fought in colonial wars, survived impossible situations, killed enemies that thought they could not be killed. Now Park asked him to do something that no human had ever attempted. The Central Command Network, Park explained, showing him images of a massive structure deep inside the hegemony homeworld. It coordinates all hegemony military communications. Every order, every battle plan, every ship movement goes through this system. If we destroy it, their fleet loses coordination. Ships cannot talk to each other. Commanders cannot give orders. Chaos. Taiho studied the images. The target was buried under kilometers of rock, protected by the most advanced security in the galaxy. Getting in would be nearly impossible. Getting out? Woo. LD be completely impossible. This is a one-way mission, he said. It was not a question, yes. Park did not look away from his eyes. I will not order you to go. I am asking. Taiho thought about his family. His mother, who had raised him alone after his father died. His younger brother, who looked up to him like a hero. His niece, just 3 years old, who called him Uncle Bear and laughed when he tickled her. He thought about what would happen. To them, if the hegemony won, slavery, death, a future where humans existed only to serve their masters. We'll go, he said. His team was small. Just 8 soldiers, the best humanity had. They loaded onto a stealth ship designed to be invisible to every sensor the hegemony possessed. As they prepared to launch, Taiho looked back at Earth one last time. The blue planet hung in space like a jewel. He might never see it again. Let's go save the world, he said to his team. No one laughed. They all knew what they were facing. The Grand Armada launched 2 days later. 50,000 ships moved toward human space like a slow wave of death. Commander Thren stood on the bridge of his new flagship, watching the stars slide past. This time, he promised himself, there will be no mercy. No survivors. Nothing left but ashes. Behind him, unnoticed by any sensor, a tiny stealth ship slipped through the Armada's wake and headed in the opposite direction, toward the heart of the hegemony, toward a mission that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Admiral Park watched the enemy approach on her tactical display. The numbers were terrifying. The odds were impossible. But she had fought impossible odds before. She opened a channel to all human forces. This is Admiral Park. The enemy is coming. They think their numbers will crush us. They think we will break. They're wrong. Every day we delay them. Every ship we destroy. Every supply line we cut brings us closer to victory. Fight smart. Fight hard. Fight for everyone who has ever lived under tyranny's boot. We are humanity. We do not give up. We do not surrender. And we do not lose. The final battle for the galaxy had begun. The Grand Armada swept through human space like a plague of steel and fire. 50,000 ships spread across the star systems, hunting for resistance. Commander Thren had learned from his first defeat. He did not rush forward blindly. He sent scouts ahead. He protected his supply lines. He moved slowly and carefully, crushing everything in his path. The outer colonies fell first. Small settlements on distant moons that had no defenses. The hegemony burned them to ash and left no survivors. Thren wanted the humans to know what was coming. He wanted them to feel despair. But Admiral Una Park did not feel despair. She felt cold, calculated fury. She had evacuated civilians from the war zone months ago, moving them to hidden bunker worlds that even the hegemony's best sensors could not find. What remained in the path of the Armada were not helpless targets. They were traps. Captain Jin Ho Kwan led the first raid 3 weeks into the invasion. His squadron of 12 ships appeared from nowhere behind a hegemony supply convoy. They destroyed 40 transport vessels in 8 minutes, then vanished before the escort ships could respond. 2 days later, he struck again. And again. And again. The hegemony had never faced enemies like this. Their previous wars had been simple. Find the enemy fleet, destroy it, conquer the planet. But the humans refused to gather their fleet in one place. They refused to fight fair battles. They struck from shadows, killed quickly, and disappeared like ghosts. Cowards, Thren snarled at his officers. They hide and run instead of facing us with honor. But honor did not fill empty fuel tanks. Honor did not replace the supplies that vanished in human raids. The Grand Armada slowed, then slowed more, as its supply lines bled from 1,000 small cuts. On the jungle planet of Vesa, the first alien uprising began. Servants who had worked in the great houses for generations turned on their masters. They had no weapons, so they used tools. They had no training, so they fought with raw fury. Thousands died, but they took their oppressors with them. When hegemony reinforcement ships arrived, they found the planet's rulers dead and the slaves free. The news spread. On Keth, miners collapsed the tunnels that led to the surface, trapping their overseers underground forever. On Droma, factory workers sabotaged the machines that built weapons for the hegemony. On a dozen other worlds, the fires of rebellion burned. High Overlord Vorn had no choice. He diverted ships from the Grand Armada to crush the uprisings. 1,000 ships became 2,000, then 5,000, then 10,000. The Armada that was supposed to destroy humanity was bleeding away. Fighting enemies on 100 fronts, Dr. Hannah Lim tracked every development from her command post. She slept 2 hours a night, sustained by stimulants and determination. She saw patterns that others missed. She predicted hegemony movements before they happened. She found weaknesses that no one else could see. They are stretched thin, she told Admiral Park. Every ship they send to fight rebels is one less ship attacking us. If we can hold on for 3 more months, their supply situation becomes critical. They will have to choose between conquering us and keeping their empire. 3 months, Park said quietly. Can we last that long? The answer came in blood. Human colonies fell one by one. New Sol was destroyed in a bombardment that lasted 6 hours. Port Darwin held for 2 weeks before being overwhelmed. The shipyards at Titan were captured, dealing a crippling blow to human production. Captain Kwan fought in every battle. His ship, the Defiance, became a legend. He destroyed over 100 enemy vessels in 3 months of constant warfare. His crew worshipped him. His enemies feared him. But even legends get tired. We are losing, he told Park during a rare moment of rest. His face was thin, and his eyes were hollow. He had not slept properly in weeks. We kill 10 of their ships for every one of ours they destroy, and we are still losing. There are just too many. Park nodded. She looked as exhausted as he did. The war was taking everything from them, you know. That is why everything depends on Sergeant Rue now. Far across the galaxy, Taiho Rue was deep inside enemy territory. His stealth ship had carried his team through the Armada's lines without being detected. For 2 months they had traveled in darkness, avoiding patrols, hiding in asteroid fields. Inching closer to their target, the hegemony homeworld was nothing like Earth. It was an ancient planet, covered in metal cities that stretched from horizon to horizon. Billions of aliens lived there, served by millions of slaves from conquered worlds. At its heart stood the Tower of Command, a structure that reached into the clouds. Housing the central command network that coordinated every hegemony, Military operation? Rue's team landed in a slave district on the dark side of the planet. They wore disguises that made them look like another conquered species. For 3 weeks, they moved through the underbelly of the city, gathering intelligence, mapping security systems, preparing for the final assault. 2 of his soldiers died getting that information. 1 was caught by a random patrol. Another was killed sabotaging a sensor grid. Rue held their hands as they died, promising them that their sacrifice would mean something. Now, with only 6 soldiers left, he stood in a tunnel beneath the Tower of Command. Above him was the most heavily protected structure in the galaxy. Around him were enough explosives to bring it all down. "The charges are set," whispered Mina, his second in command. She was young, barely 25, but she had the steady hands of a surgeon and the cold eyes of a killer. "Once we trigger them, we have 4 minutes to reach minimum safe distance." "Minimum safe distance is 10 kilometers, said another soldier. "We cannot make it." Rue had known that from the beginning. They all had. They had volunteered anyway. "We don't need to make it," Rue said. "We need to give Admiral Park a chance. We need to give humanity a future. That is enough." Activated his communicator and sent a coded signal across the stars. 3 words, transmitted in a burst so short that no hegemony sensor could intercept it. "We are ready." On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Park received the message. She closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about the soldiers who would die to give humanity this chance. Then she opened her eyes and turned to her officers. "All remaining ships, prepare for final assault. We are going to the hegemony homeworld." Captain Kwan stared at her. "We have 80 ships left. They have 30,000 defending their capital." "I know," Park said. "But in 4 days, those 30,000 ships will lose coordination. Their shields will fail. Their weapons will misfire. They will be blind and confused. And we will be there to finish what we started." She looked at the stars on her tactical display. Somewhere out there, Taiho Ru was waiting to die so that humanity could live. "Launch the fleet," she ordered. "It ends now." 80 ships against 30,000. Every officer in the human fleet knew the numbers. Every soldier understood what they were flying into. They came anyway. Admiral Una Park stood on the bridge of the command ship. Watching the hegemony homeworld grow larger on the screen, the planet was surrounded by a wall of warships, each one bristling with weapons, each one crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. Behind that wall, High Overlord Vorn waited in his throne room, certain that this pathetic human fleet had come to die. The was half right, Captain Ginho Kwan led the charge. His ship, the Defiance, was battered from months of combat. Its hull was scarred. Its systems were held together with emergency repairs and desperate hope. But it still flew, and Kwan still fought. "All ships, follow my lead," he ordered. "Stay tight, stay fast. Don't stop for anything." The hegemony fleet opened fire, space filled with plasma bolts and missile swarms. Human ships twisted and dodged, their pilots pushing engines beyond safe limits. Dancing through walls of death that should have killed them in seconds, they lost 12 ships in the first minute, then 8 more, then 15. But they kept coming, pushing deeper into the enemy formation, refusing to break. High Overlord Vorn watched from his throne room with growing confusion. This was suicide. These humans were throwing away their last ships in a charge that could not possibly succeed. What were they hoping to achieve? Deep beneath the Tower of Command, Sergeant Taiho Ru checked his timer. 3 minutes until detonation. His team was already gone. Mina had been killed by guards on the upper levels. The others had died holding corridors, buying time with their lives. Only Ru remained. He moved through the tunnels beneath the command network, placing the last of his charges. His hands were steady even though his heart was breaking. He thought about his mother, who would never know how he died. He thought about his brother, who would carry the family name forward. He thought about his niece, who would grow up in a free galaxy because of what he was about to do. 2 minutes above the planet, the battle had become chaos. Human ships were falling, but they were taking enemies with them. Captain Kwan's Defiance had destroyed 20 ships and was still fighting, its weapons firing without pause, its engines screaming with strain. Then Quan saw his target. Vorn's flagship. The largest ship in the fleet, the symbol of hegemony power, it hung in the center of the formation like a dark throne. All ships, Quan said, his voice calm despite everything, concentrate fire on the flagship. Clear me a path. Remaining human ships turned as one. They threw everything they had at the vessels between Quan and his target. 30 ships became 20. 20 became 15. 15 became 8. The Defiance broke through. 1 minute, Quan aimed his ship at the flagship's hull. He could have tried to disable it from a distance. He could have fired missiles and hoped they got through the shields. Instead, he did something the hegemony had never seen. He accelerated. All hands, prepare for impact, he announced. It has been an honor serving with you. The Defiance hit the flagship at full speed. The collision tore through armor and shields, burying the human ship deep in the enemy vessel's guts. Quan was thrown against his restraints. Blood filled his vision. Around him, his crew was dying, but they were not dead yet. Marines. He coughed into his communicator. Go. 40 human soldiers poured out of the shattered ship. They fought through corridors filled with smoke and fire, killing every enemy they met. They had one target, the bridge. One mission, kill the commander. 30 seconds are why you reached the central core of the command network. It was a massive chamber filled with crystal columns that pulsed with light. This was the brain of the hegemony war machine. Every order, every communication, every piece of military coordination flowed through these crystals. He armed the final charge and stepped back. For Earth, he whispered. For everyone. Press the button. The explosion was visible from orbit. A pillar of fire erupted from the Tower of Command, rising into the sky like an angry god. The shockwave flattened buildings for kilometers in every direction. The Central Command Network, 40,000 years of accumulated military infrastructure, was reduced to rubble in an instant. And across the hegemony fleet, everything went wrong. Shields flickered and died. Weapon systems crashed. Navigation computers showed gibberish. Ships that had been coordinated with perfect precision suddenly became blind, deaf, and dumb. Captains screamed orders that no one could hear. Gunners fired at shadows. Some ships collided with each other in the chaos. The human fleet did not. Hesitate. Admiral Park's voice cut through the confusion. All ships, attack. Target anything that still has power. Give them nothing. 80 ships had become 32. But 32 ships against a confused, blind enemy was enough. Human weapons tore through shields that no longer worked. Human missiles hit ships that could not see them coming. In 20 minutes, the defensive fleet was shattered. On the flagship, Captain Quan led what remained of his Marines to the bridge. He was wounded badly. His left arm was broken. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. But he would not stop. The bridge doors exploded inward. Quan and his soldiers stormed through, killing guards with quick, brutal efficiency. And there, at the center of the room, stood High Overlord Vor. The ancient ruler looked at the humans with something between fury and disbelief. You destroyed everything, he hissed. 40,000 years of empire. Gone because of you. Quan raised his weapon. You destroyed yourself when you thought you could enslave us. We just finished the job. Before he could fire, a new voice spoke from behind him. Let me. Taiho Ru walked onto the bridge. He should have been dead. The explosion should have killed him. But he had found a maintenance shaft at the last moment. It had saved his life, barely. He was burned. His uniform was torn. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, but he was alive. He was standing in front of the being who had ordered the deaths of billions. Vorn stared at the young human soldier. Why? He asked. Why fight when you could have lived comfortably under our rule? You would have had peace, safety, purpose. True stepped closer. His eyes burned with something older than anger. Because we would rather die free than live on our knees. He fired. The High Overlord fell. The throne room was silent. And across the galaxy, the hegemony began to collapse. 1 year later, Ambassador Somi Cho stood before the newly formed Galactic Council. It was a different kind of council now. Not a tool of oppression, but a true gathering of free peoples. 17 species that had been enslaved now governed themselves. Hundreds of worlds that had known only suffering now knew hope. The chamber was vast and filled, with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. They had come to honor the species that had given them their freedom. They had come to offer humanity leadership of the new order. Somicho smiled gently and shook her head. "We are grateful for your offer," she said. "But we did not fight to rule. We fought so that every species could choose their own path. That is what freedom means. If we became your new masters, we would be no better than the ones we defeated." The chamber was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It spread through the room like a wave, growing louder and louder until it shook the walls. These species had never known rulers who did not want power. The humans confused them. The humans amazed them. Admiral Park retired to a small house by the ocean on Earth. She spent her days watching the waves and thinking about everyone who had died so that humanity could live free. Captain Kwan survived his wounds and became an admiral himself, training a new generation of officers who would defend the peace their predecessors had won with blood. Sergeant Kasaru went home to his family. His mother cried when she saw him. His brother hugged him so tight he could not breathe. His niece climbed into his lap and asked him to tell her a story about the stars. He told her about a young species that refused to bow, about a single word that changed the galaxy, about the power of standing up and saying no to those who would take your freedom. Dr. Hannah Lim wrote the official history of the war. It was translated into every language in the galaxy and taught to children on 1,000 worlds. Its title was simple: No, how one word brought down an empire. Years later, when new tyrants rose to threaten the peace, they always remembered the humans. They remembered what happened to the last empire that thought it could make humanity kneel. And they always thought twice before sending their demands, because they knew what the answer would be. It would always be the same word. The word that meant freedom. The word that meant defiance. The word that changed everything? No.